Hey guys, I'm back from a pretty lengthy hiatus, or at least what felt like a pretty lengthy hiatus due to a whole bunch of life stuff, but I'm all moved into my new place and I'm free for a good chunk of the summer. I have been to two major tournaments since my last video, Battle Arena Melbourne in Australia and Crown in Utah, and I've noticed that the meta is advancing very quickly, and for better or for worse, I've experienced that firsthand. So I decided to make a video about a topic I've wanted to address for quite some time, namely a video about advice for low and mid-tier mains. Maining low and mid-tiers is tough. Take it from a reluctant but lifelong low-tier main who's been through basically all 5 stages of grief with Ganon. It's really not easy dearly loving a character when they're not very good, since you might then be pincered between quitting the game since you don't find the same fulfillment from other characters, or proceeding with and accepting a whole lot of frustration. That being said, if you do decide to travel down the path of greatest resistance with a lower mid-tier character, I have about a decade's worth of advice for you condensed into 5 convenient little points. First of which, don't make your problem your opponent's problem. What I mean by this is that though it's really frustrating to feel like you lost less to your opponent and more to your own character, you have to ultimately understand that it's not fair to your opponent to put them down or undermine them by complaining about how your character sucks. It's natural to express that frustration somewhere, maybe you have a picture of your main that you throw darts at when you get home in your bedroom, but don't let that somewhere be in your opponent's face. It's not their fault your character sucks, and they're not to be blamed for doing their job, which is to win. 2. Take responsibility for your losses. If you're going to be stuck using damaged goods, you may as well make the best of it and grow a little from it. It's tempting, I know, to blame your losses on your character, and while your crap character very well may be a big reason you lost, maybe even the biggest reason you lost, they're almost certainly not the only reason you lost. That is, there is always something you could have done better, even if it wouldn't have dramatically altered the outcome of the set. There are 2 sides to this coin, in that your character has shortcomings that work against you, but it's your job to work around those shortcomings. Having a one-sided view of responsibility means you'll be a card-carrying member of the O2 Club until you're dead. You can view things one of 2 ways. My character sucks and should be carrying their weight, or my character sucks, but I'll account for and adapt to their weaknesses and carry the team. In other words, be willing to work as hard as you need to win, rather than as hard as you think you should have to. I'm a little embarrassed to admit I don't actually know what comes after the number 2, but whatever that number is, have the right outlook. If you're going to retain any measure of sanity as a serious competitive low-tier main, you cannot, I repeat, you cannot view the game as a contest of who's better or worse, but rather realize that you and your opponent have radically different toolsets to achieve radically different goals, and as such, you do not want to directly compare yourself to others. You'll feel like a huge loser if you do. The way our tournaments are formatted reflects a foundational assumption that all things are equal. The one who wins is rewarded by advancing. So, it's pretty easy to conclude that a loss or win necessarily indicate the worse or better player respectively. Things, however, are very rarely this simple, and in my experience, a much healthier perspective is that winning and losing don't represent superiority or inferiority necessarily, but rather success or failure. And I know that's not going to suddenly make you shout, "Oh, gee whiz, I can't wait to go lose now." And it might sound a little trivial, but the distinction is important because it accounts for the fact that there really is no comparison to be made between you and your opponent. It's better to feel like you didn't hit your mark, rather than that you're a fish being measured against a monkey in tree climbing ability. Number the Pikmin game I really wish Nintendo would finally release. Do it for yourself, not for others. Fantasies of being the low-tier hero who bests all odds to the adoration and adulation of fans can be very attractive, a little addictive even, but they're just that, fantasies. Not because succeeding with a bad character is categorically impossible, but the nature of low tiers is such that you will, if to be a little melodramatic, die 1,000 deaths all for one fleeting moment of glory, and that isn't a sustainable dynamic. I've died the 1,000 deaths, so to speak, and had the fleeting moments of glory, and they were indeed very fleeting. They're great, sure, but you have to be cautious to not let them become your sole motivation for putting up with the low tier life. Glory should be gravy, and you will find that that really is all it is, because if you subsist on that glory alone, just like if you try to survive by eating gravy, you'll burn out. To that, say you develop a reputation as a talented low tier main who does fairly well. That means you're no longer the underdog, but you still have to work quadruple overtime as an underdog does, which is the reality for those who are asked essentially to perform a concert with a piano that's missing half its keys. If you do really well, you'll just become a good win that happens to be a lot more likely to lose than all the other good wins by the nature of your character. Do not torture yourself to prove something to others other than yourself. Zero comes to mind, as a matter of fact, as a very lucid reminder that no matter how incredible you are at the game or what you do, it takes like at max a year before people move on and want a repeat performance to stay convinced. Just do you. None of the above matters unless you let external factors have a stake in your reasons for using your character. If you do let that happen, you find yourself in a really horrible no-win situation where you reap the worst of both being a low tier and being a reputable player. A standard of performance that is extremely difficult to maintain and abundantly stressful if you fail to live up to. Fifth and lastly, be realistic. This is the big one. At some point or another, all of us came into this game thinking that tiers didn't matter as long as you had the goods to back your mediocre character up. You might even be thinking that as I speak, if I haven't convinced you otherwise yet. Yeah, anything is possible, and you know what? God bless that fact, because without that hope, we may all as well just go do a 10-point dive into our graves. But it's critical to understand that your skill level as a low tier does not and cannot uniquely determine how well you do. A lot of low tier mains look up to low tier heroes and think they can do it, so can I. As someone who's been called a low tier hero for the better part of a decade and has been cited as proof that low tiers can do well, there is a lot more to the low tier hero story than just the high points you hear about. When low tiers do well, it's a mixture of skill and luck. By the nature of low tiers, no matter how amazing you are, you will eventually approach their absolute skill ceiling, and from there it becomes a game of chance and making correct guesses, and no amount of skill can eliminate factors of chance. You can improve your odds by optimizing everything you do, which is a fun little exercise, but you can never guarantee that you'll guess correctly all the time. High tiers and above are just that, high tiers, because they can either guess with impunity, that is, they can guess safely, or they can cover so many options effectively that they effectively remove the need to guess. Doing well with a low tier can be done, but ultimately skill doesn't play a decisive role in that happening, rather a supporting role in tandem with good fortune. When you reach high levels of play, the risks and mistakes low tiers are allowed to take and make are such that the low tier must massively outskill the opponent. But being at a high level of play means the possibility to create such a skill gap is either extraordinarily difficult or just simply impossible, so the low tier has to guess correctly a lot more than is consistently repeatable at least. So, with all this said, I've probably made loads of people run screaming for the hills from the idea of maining a low tier, but please don't let what I've said scare you off if you really love your character. Ganon is the centerpiece of my love for all of Smash, and as such I can tell you that loving your character is a tremendously powerful motivator that supersedes a lot of these things. But it's important to understand what using a disadvantaged character entails, since it can spare you a whole lot of frustration if you're realistic about your expectations and honest about your reasons. And at that, I think that'll do it for now. Thank you guys for being patient while I made some life adjustments, but a few updates before I end the video. I'm now officially living in Boise, Idaho, and I'm very glad I moved here. It's pretty nice here. The move away from my old town marked the closure of what probably was and ever will be the most important chapter in my life for many reasons, but given that I have a little time this summer before beginning my new job, I'll be putting a lot of that time into Smash projects as well as a few other things. As always, in addition, if you did enjoy the video and would like to help keep them coming in the future, you can feel free to check out my Patreon with the link in the description, or if you'd just like to hear from me a little more, you can check out my Twitter too. At that, I will see you guys around.